We welcome you to Austin for the women's qualifications. Now time for the national anthems. And with that, the anthems are complete, and we welcome you to Austin, Texas. We have just about 3:20 remaining until we face off this first period of the second game of the Women's Floorball Championship qualifications. We'll talk about yesterday's game in just a moment, but first the starting lineups, and we begin with the visitors on the scoreboard today. That would be the United States of America. Starting on defense, Tiffany Gerber. She had one of her better days statistically in a United States uniform. After only 2 points in her prior 13 games coming into yesterday, she had 3 points a day ago. She will be joined defensively by Elsa Tanskanen, who scored a goal yesterday. Up front, Marie Hagstrom, the captain, will center a line with Suzanne Lindquist and Clara Kirkgetta. Now, Hagstrom was the player of the game yesterday for the U.S. 2 goals, 3 assists, and 5 points. For Team Canada, it is Megan Jeffrey stepping back to D and Riley Borghese, the captain, on D as well. Sophia Holm today steps from D2 forward. They were double shifting her on D in the third period yesterday. She'll be joined by Elise Van Thielen and Sophie Pomeroy. Van Thielen was Canada's player of the game yesterday. 2 goals, 1 assist for 3 points. The starting goaltenders, we get 2 different goaltenders today. Ella Yarda will be starting in net for the Americans, and Ida Hudson will be starting in net for the Canadians. Hudson saw action in the Fredericton World Games qualifiers against the United States, stopping 8 of 10 shots that she saw and going 1-0. So Trent Kling, Mark Raup with you here today. And Mark, we saw a barn burner of a game yesterday. I don't want to put too fine of a point on it, but 9-6 doesn't reflect how evenly that game was played. What can we expect from today's game now that Canada, their backs are against the wall and they need to win today to stay alive to potentially go to Czechia later this year?
I mean, Canada has nothing to lose at this point. They got to leave it all on the table because a loss here sends them home, despite the fact we will play 3 games regardless. But we definitely are going to see a Canada team that should come out hungry and looking to score early. And as far as the United States goes, I think that they just have to stay the course and hang on to really how they played in the first and the third period, especially in the third when they just completely shut Canada down.
And I think the first 5 minutes of today's game will be impactful, and I think you could say that for any sporting event, right? First 5 minutes is always the biggest one. But in this circumstance, I was talking with our great camera guy, Ricardo, in pregame warmups, and he said, the energy is way down today compared to yesterday, and it could be the team that comes out most energetically in the first 5 minutes. If the United States stakes their claim to a 2-0, 3-0 lead, that could be trouble for a young team in Canada, and likewise, Canada has those young legs. Maybe they're recovered a little bit more from yesterday than the Americans.
Yeah, you really have to think that we're going to see an awful lot of that first line from Canada this go-round, who had a lot of success in the second period of the game, maybe not so much in the third. But you got to imagine that they're going to be looking to get shots from the point and really work to get the ball in front of the net, get some screens, and get some good shots on the U.S. goalie.
Now, one thing to note for the United States, Ruth Leach is dressed today, but she's got a lower body injury, so may not see a lot of playing time as the game progresses. The bench is shortened from 17 to 16 for the United States, and Canada wins the opening draw. They are headed from right to left on your screen in their white jerseys, their home jerseys. They were wearing reds yesterday. On the far side, it's Holm. Holm behind the net. Yarda follows, and then it's waved at by Gerber. Advantage called as Holmes spins it underneath, looking for Pomeroy, but it's turned over by the Americans, and Lindquist sends it back the other way. Lindquist traipsing into the Canadian zone, back behind the net for Hagstrom, and now the first offensive look for this American first line. Hagstrom looking in front. Oh, that nearly popped around and in front of the net, but Jeffrey's able to clean up the mess and clear the zone for Canada. Jeffries across the court. Here is Pomeroy. Pomeroy known mostly as a playmaker for Canada, although she did have a goal in yesterday's game. Feeds it back to Borghese, and now Canada will change on the ball. Three changes here in floor ball, and Emily Blomquist takes over to allow Borghese to change. Here is Sharon Lobley. Lobley had a goal yesterday, but now finds herself on the second line, trying to find a little bit of chemistry. She's out there with Evie Adam and Cassandra St. Denis, who steps from defense, where she was most of yesterday, to forward. That shot blocked off of the free hit by Campbell, and now Nora Alto tries to control for the Americans.
Boy, we're wide open so far. This is back and forth and pretty good action, as opposed to yesterday when we saw the teams feeling each other out and trying to figure out where some soft spots were. We're just going to it today.
Yeah, both teams so far end to end. A nice defensive play by Jen Kohler, and Kohler deflects it out of bounds once again. I think for the Americans, if you have to look at a forward that played spectacular defense yesterday, it starts with Jen Kohler. Certainly saved a couple of goals in the third period, pulled a ball off of the goal line for the Americans, and once again has a solid defensive shift.
Yeah, you have to be happy so far if you're both of these teams. They've both been in the zone. They both have a couple of looks, but not really anything too threatening as of yet.
Boy, kind of a mess near center court. Jessica Crossweight lost her stick, and I think she's going to be penalized there. And they might say that she attempted to, so she is saying at the moment, I think she attempted to grab her stick very quickly. But ultimately, you cannot play without your stick in floorball. It is not like hockey in that regard.
Yep.
And I think they're saying, like, hey, she impeded the progress of the game or did not pick up her stick as quickly.
The rules definitely say that you've got to go get your stick quickly, and then also you can't impact play while you don't have a stick in your hand. And I think she just got caught in an unfortunate spot where the ball was already on top of her, and there wasn't a whole lot that she could do.
And Mark, I will defer to you on these matters. You are far more of an official than I am, certainly. But first, look at the power play for either team. So far, no special teams in this tournament other than Canada playing 6-on-5 at the end of yesterday's game. There were no power plays. And I was talking to the officials last night. They were so impressed at how cleanly yesterday's game was played side to side. Now, Hagstrom from the far corner as the United States sets up their power play. Canada's box play, there's a little more aggressive there. They're bringing one of the top forwards out of the box and pressuring the points. Here's Gerber underneath. One-touch pass to Hagstrom. Hagstrom looks behind the net. Hagstrom has the ball deflected away from her by Jeffries. Now finds Gerber. Gerber over to Tanskanen. Tanskanen shot, and it's waved at by Hudson, but goes wide. Still looking for our first shot on net in today's game. And that was an aggressive play against the boards by Blomquist. She's able to poke it free, but Hagstrom recovering here. About a minute to go on the Jess Crossweight penalty. Lindquist shot. Oh, that hit the crook of the iron. And Gerber recollects for the United States. They'll recycle underneath through Hagstrom. Hagstrom looks out in front, wanted Guerra, and that ball is cleared the length by the Canadians.
You made an excellent call there early on, Trent. They're playing more of a triangle +1 than they're playing a box here. They're really being aggressive on the ball.
And you see the Americans trying to trigger everything from behind the net through Hagstrom, which is also somewhat unusual for a floorball power play. And Canada really collapsing around the net. Hagstrom back to Guerra.
They've got 3 out of 4 in the box right now, which, generally speaking, when you're trying to box play, you want to have a little bit more space.
Finds Lindquist for the one-timer off to the right-hand side, and that's Lindquist's bread and butter, is that one-timer around the net, those slashes around the goaltender area, and they will say this was deflected out by a Canadian stick, so the Americans will get a free hit as time winds down on this power play for the Americans. Hagstrom behind the net. Here's Tanskanen. Back to Hagstrom. Looks weak side. KKG back to Hagstrom. Pass in front is kicked around. Canada's at full strength. They'll have to watch out as Jess Crossway comes out of the penalty box, launches a shot on net, and boy, Ella Yarda has to be careful. She about left the goaltender area with the ball, and she's talking things over with the official about just that thing.
She was definitely tiptoeing right at the line. That was a little dangerous.
I like how aggressive she was in terms of playing the ball, though. One thing we know about Kate McBean, the American starting goaltender from yesterday, is she is self-admittedly not the best at playing the ball, but Yarda was very aggressive in that circumstance. Love it. Against the grain, looking for Kohler on the backside. Kohler comes to collect in the far corner. Nicole Crosswaite looking her over. Crosswaite has about a foot on Kohler back there, but unfortunately for her, got her body into Jen Kohler a little bit, and it'll be a free hit for the Americans.
Early on here, it looks like Canada's defense is really choosing to stack down low and really keep a lot more defensive pressure on the people in front of the net than out on the outside.
A quick shot blocked down by Canada. Home breakaway shot, and that's stopped by the mask of Yarda. Home to the near side. Back it comes to Nicole Crosswaite. Boy, a centering pass goes awry. Campbell stole it for a second, but has it dribble off of her stick. Home takes it for the Canadians, and it's off the stick of Crosswaite and off the stick of Esther Angerstig.
Nice defensive play to slow that one down. That looked like it might have been getting a little dangerous, and Esther Angerstig did a really good job of just flicking it out of bounds and getting a reset.
So it'll be a Canadian free hit near center. And it's Borghese to do the honors. On to Jeffries, who, again, we mentioned in the third period of yesterday's game, it moved up to forward a little bit with Canada chasing the game somewhat. She's back to D now. KKG on the break for the Americans after the Canadian turnover. Tries that quick snapper, and it's blocked down by Borghese. Canada wants to respond the opposite direction. Pomeroy's shot right into the belly of Yarda, and she whips a pass to the far side. Lindquist decides to slow things down, but automatically you're seeing a different game from the crease out from the Americans with Yarda's ability to play the ball.
Yeah, her aggressiveness is really showing through early on. She is looking to throw the ball down the field, not trying to find easy soft throws behind the net, really looking to push the pace of play going up the field.
And I'll take credit for that last mask save because she's using my mask actually in today's game as that ball popped out of bounds. Unahawk, of course, a deal with the United States national team. She didn't have a Unahawk mask, and I said, well, I'll give you my national team mask. Here you go.
Yeah, there's about a 1.5 foot difference in height between the two of you. So that explains why that helmet looks a little large.
It is. I would say I do have quite a large noggin here as this is whistled dead by the officials, and it will be an American free hit on the near side. The Americans will bring out their first line for this free hit, and we saw the Americans take a number of free hits from an advantageous position offensively in Game 1. And this is really their first in a decent position here in Game 2. Gerber's attempted pass off the stick of Lobley and out.
It's still really early, but we have not seen the USA third line at all yet. It's been ones and twos.
That ball deflected wide. The shot attempt from Hagstrom, and a Canadian infraction will give the United States another free hit. They spied Blomqvist on an overly physical play.
Yeah, a little bit of interference on that one, just not letting her push through.
And I think it was interesting, Mark, a lot of times we associate the Canadian national teams, both women and men, with a more physical brand of play. We didn't necessarily see that, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but we didn't necessarily see that yesterday. We're seeing it a little more today.
Yeah, it feels like both teams are being a little bit more aggressive in the corners and a little bit harder with their pressure person to person, which yesterday it really felt a lot more soft and open down low.
Just a creative play by Lovett to bank it off of the boards to Campbell, whose shot went wide. Kohler goes spilling into the boards. The officials say play on. Here is Lovett's shot towards the net, and a nice kick save. And they are going to call goaltender interference on Kim Campbell there.
What a toe save that was,
man.
That
was an excellent save by Ida Hudson.
Very athletic kick.
And Hudson's a keeper. She played a few cycles for the U19s in Canada as well. So she's got some experience. Acquitted herself well in Fredericton, I think. That 80% save percentage. Love it at center, and she will be called for the stick infraction. So we've seen probably as many whistles in the first 7 minutes of this one as maybe we saw in the entire game in terms of the infraction.
It definitely feels like the refs are trying to keep it a little bit less stick-checky this go-round than we were in the first game.
And the refs told me, both of them did last night, that they were impressed at how few stick infractions there really were, and that sometimes, you have to call a few early in the game, but they didn't feel like they had to do that to keep the game in check yesterday. And so today, both of the officials, David Rampoldi and Alberto Coduto, are calling a few more infractions, both with the body and the stick to this point.
It also makes a lot of sense, though, that especially on the Canadian side, that you'd want to come out with a little more energy and a little bit more strength than you did in the first game.
Angerstig was pinching up from her defensive spot, trying to pass back across to Catherine Lovett, who again has had a good first 7 minutes of this one. She came out yesterday like a house of fire. Was really, we talked about kind of a pest for the Americans. It's turned over at center by Lindquist, popped out by Riley Borghese. It'll go back to the United States.
I got to chat with Catherine right after the game yesterday and was telling her laughingly how we had referred to her as a pest, and she took it as a big compliment. She said that she feels like it's her job to make everybody uncomfortable out on the field, and I feel like she does a really good job of that because she's just always where you need her to be to make the play as a forward on defense.
Tanskanen plays it up to Hagstrom after that ball bounced between players a few times, and now the United States will settle. KKG from the near boards. Double teamed by the Canadian zone. Borghese looks over her. Holm pinches down to help, and KKG uses that extra arm to shift her way around Borghese. That'll be whistled down by the official. That's something she got a few whistles against her for yesterday. Yeah. A little crafty move there, and when you get away with it, it makes you look like a genius. Down the far wing is Pomeroy. In front, Holm looks for Jeffries, and a great defensive play by Hagstrom, who gets the block on the shot attempt from Van Thielen.
Boy, Van Thielen made a great job of settling that ball down and getting another chance on net after a kind of wild bouncer.
Hagstrom forward to Lindquist. Back to Hagstrom, but the pass picked off. Here is Pomeroy on the partial break. Shot stopped by the mask of Yarda.
Two big helmet saves early.
And Hagstrom wisely slows things down for the United States. And that's the thing with Sophie Pomeroy. She is one of the better passers, might be the best passer out there for either team here today, but she's got a whale of a shot, just doesn't use it a ton. Used it that time on the break, and Yarda was up to the task.
Yeah, that was definitely a ripper. She got all of that ball.
Lovett on the far wing, back to Angerstig, and on to Lovett once again. Lovett pops it deeper against St. Denis, and St. Denis will be called on the body infraction. Lovett looks to the bench to see if they want to change, and both Michelle Grandchamp and Frederic Bernabeau say no, stay out there. The United States coaches. Here's Angerstig, a nice little turn, gets by a couple of Canadian defenders, whips one towards the net, but it's well wide and to the right. And
it looks like that ball got deflected out, so that's going to be a U.S. ball.
And now the United States will change, and here's the third line for the U.S. You can hear the cheers. A much larger crowd today than there was yesterday, Mark.
Yeah, pretty good turnout.
And this line for the United States has an Austin flavor, just like it did yesterday. 4 Austin players, 1 Colorado player. And Kelly Baptist making her first appearance in the series. Here's Baptist, tips it back to Martha Burkett. Burkett off the stick of a Canadian defender, and it's out. And now A quick shift is over for this third line.
They got a taste, though. They managed to get out there and get a couple seconds on the floor. That's what you want.
And I was talking to a couple of the players on the third line, Martha Burkett and Caitlin Bebout, after yesterday's game, and they said, you know, it's nice to touch the floor, get those nerves out. Sometimes it takes a couple of shifts when they're going 1-2, 1-2, 3 to get in the rhythm of game action, and so that's an effective use of them by the coaches, in this case for the United States. Van Thielen up the floor, it's turned over, Tanskanen takes it, has it kicked away for a moment, but KKG triggers it back for the United States. Things will be slowed down here, and you know, it's not often we've seen the teams go back to D, especially the Canadians, but this first line for the Americans doing it with aplomb, and now that spinner shot by Kirk Guerra is off a foot. Pomeroy, a neat spinning pass, but that's intercepted by Tanskanen. Tanskanen now up on the rush. Tanskanen shot, and that's just high. She loves that spot over the shoulder of the goalkeeper. She's gotten me a time or two on that one, and she rifled that just high.
USA starting to show a little bit more life on the offensive side of the floor right now, which is really what you want to see. You want to see your first line and second line to start getting some better scoring chances. Canada is definitely dropping a little deeper and trying to take away those passing lanes closer to the net. But the U.S. looks like they're starting to counter with some earlier passes and starting to force some odd man rushes to get people open in the middle.
The U.S. has been playing a W with their first two lines and then a 2-1-2 with the third line. Here, Lovett able to use her defensive positioning to turn it over, puts it in deep, but Crossweight taking the dump in and will turn it around to Blomqvist. Blomqvist to Lobley, turns it over to the stick of Campbell. Campbell whips it towards the net. It's partially blocked by Blomqvist. Crossweight to get it, and she was hacked on the stick by Campbell. It'll be a Canada free hit.
Pretty easy call there. Got the back of the stick, knocked the ball away.
Compared to the first 2 minutes, Mark, I was going to say this has been a haltingly played like last 8 minutes or so.
Yeah, it's definitely been a lot choppier than we saw in the first period of game one. It's moving along in kind of jerks instead of smoothly. But, you know, that may also be part of Canada's game plan here, you know. Be a little more physical, make the game a little bit more of a free hit game.
Pomeroy back to Dean Jeffries. Pomeroy spinning there against Angerstig, centered a pass. That was dangerous. Van Thielen at the intended target, and Van Thielen fouled by Campbell. There's an advantage called. Campbell looks back at the official. Here's Van Thielen left open for a shot and just put that over the crossbar. We saw her hit a few of those yesterday, and she, much like KKG for the United States, has such a quick release. You really can't leave her open for a half second.
Yeah, and boy, you can tell she's aiming for the top of the net and not missing by very much.
Still scoreless. About 9 minutes to go in the first period of this one. Kick Guerra back behind the net. Here's Tanskanen. Turns with it. Back to the point, Gerber. Tiff Gerber plays it near side. Hagstrom, the American captain. Behind the net. And a nice play by Borghese to reach around her, pop that ball for a home, trying to win a 50-50 ball against Gerber at center. Those two joust. Gerber wins it away to KKG, but she spun into a hornet's nest, and it comes into the near corner. Borghese and KKG fighting for it, and they're going to say it was a hold as they both went into the corner. It'll be a Canadian free hit once again.
The game continues to be choppy like we were just talking about. It really feels like both teams are a lot more committed to being physical in this game than they were in the first, and it's slowing the game down for sure, but both teams also are having a pretty good amount of chances in their offensive zone.
First appearance for the Canadian third line that I can recall. Niskanen feeding it up the boards. It's turned over to Angerstig. Angerstig comes back to Nora Alto. And on to Kohler. Kohler chased back into the zone by McKnight. Here's Campbell. Campbell trying to step up, is bodied there by Claire Wright. Campbell's in a jousting match with both Wright and McKnight. And it continued well after the whistle.
The cheers from the fans interfered a little bit with the whistle there.
Comes back to Campbell, rifles a shot. That's a couple of feet wide, but on the far wing, here's Lovett trying to poke that loose from Niskanen. Niskanen calmly up to Claire Wright, and now McKnight holds. McKnight looks up. Campbell's right there, cuts her off. McKnight comes back defensively. She'll exchange with Niskanen. Niskanen wasn't quite sure about where in that circumstance McKnight was going with it, but it works out for the Canadians. They've got it along the
pretty
inwards.
fortunate bounce there.
It was indeed. That could have been trouble. And speaking of bounces, that was a dangerous bounce that was cleared out by Campbell. Coming back to get it is Claire Wright.
Smart clear by Kim Campbell. Let everybody get their feet, get a change.
We see the first line for the Americans out against the first line for the Canadians now, as the Canadians got their third line in, gave the first couple of lines a breather, and under 7 minutes to play in the first period. Both of these teams looking for the first strike. Van Thielen, her pass partially deflected and then stolen by Lindquist. Hagstrom in front. Oh, a nifty, cheeky little play to Kirk Guetta, and scooping that was Ida Hudson in net for the Canadians.
Just a little bit too hot to handle there.
On the far wing, Holm underneath, gets a return feed from Pomeroy, and it's deflected away by Hagstrom. Pomeroy trying to wrap around a little bit. It's poked into the air. Borghese had it for a moment, but a nice spinning stick by Kirk Guetta forces the Canadians back deeper into their defensive territory. Canadians will regroup, change on the fly. And this is Lobley. Lobley waved at, loses the ball momentarily, but it comes back onto the stick of Adam. Adams down there with St. Denis. Advantage is called to the United States. They'll have an opportunity to clear. Gerber against the Canadian press. They're bringing two forwards in deep against Gerber and Tanskanen. But Tanskanen equal to the task so far. Spins, turns, uses the boards. Gerber now has an alley to clear if she wants it. Finds Lovett on the far side. That ball is popped up onto the scorer's table. Ryan Connor ducked out of the way of that rainbow of a ball floating down there. Daryl Gross managed to fish it out, and the Americans will trigger it in on the free hit.
Feels like the Canadian team is ratcheting up the pressure a little bit when the USA has the ball in their own zone. We saw that two-forward press just a minute ago. It feels like they're just sort of squeezing a little bit more and a little bit more every time they're out on the floor.
So we've seen one penalty, not all that many shots on net. By my count, 7 total between the two teams. 4 by the Canadians, 3 by the Americans. Caitlin Bebout steps out there onto this line for the Americans, taking the spot of Kim Campbell. This ball down the near wing. Here's Dana Isaacs, who's out there. We get another shift for the Canadian third line. This is stolen by Bebout. She looks forward, tries to hit Lovett towards the net, hit the end of her stick, I think. And now Lovett in on the forecheck, making folks uncomfortable, as you mentioned, Mark. Niskanen down the near side. Here's Isaacs. Isaacs, another deflection by Bebout and another steal. And once again, Bebout looks forward. Bebout spins, gains advantage off a foot. This shot towards the net by Kohler is deflected in front. Knocking that down was Isaacs. Kohler along the boards. Looking back up towards the point where Alto was. Alto able to get the ball back, fires a shot,
man.
And that's wide. We haven't seen Alto take too many shots so far in this 1.5 games that we've seen so far, but that indicated certainly that she's got a cannon.
And that's the first sustained pressure we've seen from the United States offense in a while, probably in the last 7 or 8 minutes.
It's all about, it can be all about, I should say. It's not always all about, but it can be all about finding those right combinations. And Bebout on that shift, a couple of steals and a couple of nice forward plays. She's an Austin Floorball Club player locally here. Van Thielen spins with it. KKG blocks down her pass attempt. Gerber fights for it in the corner against Pomeroy. Ooh, a dangerous ball coming out in front, but Lindquist, Johnny on the spot. And Lindquist forward to KKG. Thinks about spinning around, instead finds Hagstrom. Her shot,
what a save
by Ida Hudson, partially screened and still able to get her arm down.
Really quick hands there. That was fantastic. What a save.
That was probably, to this point, the save of the game. That is so tough, Mark, you know, getting your arm down as a goalie and being partially screened as well. But Hudson equal to the task.
Leaning one way and then having to cut the other way and drop your arm at the same time. That's a lot of things to do at once.
Adam looks in front. St. Denis' shot was blocked by Gerber. Both teams as Mark mentioned, playing a little bit tighter defensively. There's been more block shots. Here's Lindquist looking in front. KKG's shot was blocked in the air. What a great play by Emily Blomquist coming back defensively. She's broken her stick. She has to pick up both pieces of the stick, race to the bench, which she does, and Canada will settle it down. Here is Niskanen as the third line comes back out for the Canadians. And really, we've started to see a rotation here where Canada's working their third line in a little bit more.
Yep, her stick broke, but it died a hero. That was a huge block shot.
It's an immense defensive play against the slippery Kirk Gedda. Now holding it is Niskanen. Niskanen puts it in deep. Here's Alto. Taking it for the Americans. Alto up the boards looking for Lovett, who has to bring her stick back in at a nice play by Angerstig to cut in front of the net. Puts it off a Canadian stick and out. And now the Americans will have another chance to settle. They'll keep the second line out with 2:04 remaining in the first. And a 0-0 game, which I'm not a betting man, but I would not have bet on this being the score 18 minutes in. Lovett takes the shot, it's batted down in front. Bebout waves at the rebound. This ball is kicked high in the air, and once again this Canadian second line having issues against the American second line. Alto gets a block, storms back the other way, leads for Bebout, who has it popped away from her by Isaacs. And now we've got some fire wagon floorball. Here's Bebout spinning with it, loses it off her backhand. Now Alto is able to poke it to the far corner. Boy, we went from first gear to fifth in an awful hurry, Mark.
Boy, that was a whole bunch of just absolute bananas floorball play there. Lots of good block shots, lots of good broken up passes, lots of good cuts through the middle.
And that might have been the second best American chance of the first period there, as Lovett had a chance and then an opportunity off the rebound as well. Borghese turns it over. Here's KKG on the backhand. Spins, regains forehand, fires it towards the net. Borghese says no, and she'll now turn it back the opposite way for Canada. Here's Pomeroy. Bounces the ball in the air. Now turns it to Holm behind the net. Holm and Pomeroy both behind the net right now for Canada. They look to center. Yarda says, I've got it, and we'll flip it ahead for Lindquist. That's a little too far for her to handle, though, and Jeffries comes out with it. Jeffries spins back to her forehand side. Looks down the far wing for Pomeroy while Holm races to the net for Canada. Pomeroy steps into the middle. Here's Jeffries' shot. That just goes wide. Rebound is in front.
Oh, my goodness.
Job by Tiffany Gerber to clear that. Tiff Gerber got her stick there. Close to a high stick if she wasn't so tall. And this shot pumped wide by Pomeroy.
That ball was really loose in the crease there. My goodness. High danger, and what a calm play to get the ball out.
I tell you, we're kind of humming along for 18 minutes. It was a haltingly played game, and the last two have just gone berserk. 5 seconds remaining.
Race, yeah.
And Bebout fighting along the boards with Borghese. That is how we will end the period.
You got to think that a 0-0 tie leans towards what the Canadian team wants currently. The closer they can keep it, the better they're going to feel as the game goes on.
Absolutely. The longer the Canadians are in it, the more they think they've got an opportunity to even things up here. Again, the Americans won 9-6 yesterday. It's a best-of-3 series. So if the United States wins today, although they will still play tomorrow at 10 o'clock Central Time U.S., the Canadians effectively would be eliminated, and the United States would be going to the World Floorball Championships in Czechia. So, Mark, what is your takeaway from that first period?
I think we covered a lot of it, but definitely what we're seeing is a choppier, less steady version of the game we saw yesterday. But I think both teams are a little bit more concentrating on defense and a little bit more worried about balls in the middle of the floor and less worried about wide-open floor ball. And I think that probably also benefits the Canadian team a little bit. The U.S. really needs to lean in to what they do well, which, like we saw yesterday, is getting the ball moving, getting some odd man rushes, getting people open. I think the more that they play into this sort of keep the ball around the outside and let Canada rally in the middle, the longer this game is going to be low scoring, and we're not going to see a whole lot of action on the goalies.
Very well said. So again, 0-0 our score after one period of play. We'll take a break for the first intermission, come back and set up the second period. This is the Women's 2025 World Floorball Championship qualifications from Austin, Texas. And we welcome you back to Austin, Texas for the second period, or just in time for the second period between the Canadian national team and the American national team. Once again, the Americans defeated the Canadian women 9-6 yesterday. They have a 1-0 advantage in this best-of-3 series. And Mark, I don't think we assumed we were going to see a scoreless first period. As you mentioned, going into break, the longer it stays scoreless, the more it seems to play into Canada's hands. What do you think the Americans might try to do in the first few minutes of the second period to break this deadlock?
I think they really need to start focusing on counter-punching out of their defense and getting some more 2-on-1s, 3-on-2s, and really just getting their defense running, and where the Canadian team can't just settle in and stand and block shots.
And the Americans win the opening draw of the second period. Glad to have you with us, Trent Kling, alongside Mark Raup and Ricardo, our star camera operator to our right. Guerra as the first line begins for the Americans. Here's Marie Hagstrom, shoots just wide. Tanskanen scoops up the rebound, and it's back to the point. The Americans check it back towards center. Tiff Gerber, what a play that probably saved a goal for the Americans in the first period. The official stats from the first period: 6 shots on goal for each team, just the 1 penalty, that to Canada. And the goalies each with 6 saves apiece. We remain scoreless, but Van Thielen trying to change that. Elise Van Thielen, her shot towards net was partially deflected by Hagstrom. Tanskanen comes down with it. Lost it now to Pomeroy, and a great play coming back from the weak side by Tiff Gerber. Motions it into the corner, and now Tanskanen will get another opportunity to clear.
Boy, that was a dangerous moment there. That ball was just sitting loose on the floor about 15 feet from the net for a second.
So the Americans with it now.
Looking a little out of sorts so far here on the defensive side.
Yeah, I was going to mention Angerstig thought she would have an outlet coming up the right boards. Did not. It got turned over to the Canadians, but Alto pops it off a Canada stick. We see the second line out for the Americans. Once again, it is Catherine Lovett out there with Jen Kohler, and then Caitlin Bebout, who moved up to this second line midway through this last period, remains up on the second line, and she'll get this pass. She'll insert it deep. It's a nice play for Lovett, and that's something, Mark, you and I talked about during the intermission. If they can get Lovett in space, that's to their advantage. Kohler spins and shoots off the leg of Cass St. Denis, who made a nice block coming back from her center position.
Those are the kind of opportunities that the U.S. team needs to take advantage of. They had that ball just right in front of the net, and it just unfortunately wouldn't settle down and couldn't get a quick shot off. But you get balls into that zone right there in front of the goalie, and man, those are the spots where good shots turn into quick goals.
Well, that was kind of an interesting hit-in for the Americans. They weren't yet done with their change. That shot came through to the net of Ida Hudson, and she pawed it away. Behind the cage is Jeffries, spinning against the defense of Suzanne Lindquist, who plays ordinarily in France, but has been a mainstay of the American team now for some time. Lindquist with 4 points in the previous qualifier in 2023. Did not manage a point yesterday, and fights on the boards against Jeffries. It'll be back to Canada.
Really good double team there by the U.S. over here on the boards right in front of us.
Jeffries inserts it deep off of the free hit. Lindquist now working against 2 Canadians on the boards, ties both of them up. Tanskanen comes away with the loose ball. Tanskanen looking, a dangerous pass out of the boards into trouble in the middle, and the United States able to handle it.
Boy, that was a ill-advised attempt at getting the ball out there. Up the wall, down the wall, but never blindly into the middle. Never, never, never.
And I would say that's a difference between what we saw in the first period today and the first period and second periods yesterday. There were a lot of blind passes into the middle that resulted in scoring chances yesterday. Hasn't been the case so far today, with that exception. The Canadians check it back to D. It's played from Blomqvist, now down the far boards by Nicole Crosswaite. Alto defending against Shirin Lobley, who plays with Forbol Yuri in Switzerland. Bebout puts it near center and wins a free hit for the Americans. The second line will change.
See if the Americans can't generate a nice little offensive play off of this free hit. It's pretty deep past the center, but they still should get a pretty good look
And Hagstrom got to look towards the net. KKG tried to tip it, but couldn't come up with it. Clara Kirkgetta plays it along the boards, but Lobley, a nice defensive play. Here comes Sharon Lobley, who runs into the foot of Gerber. Gerber forward to Hagstrom, 2-on-1, but a beautiful defensive play. Stepping into that was Emily Blomquist, possibly saving a goal for the Canadians.
What
Puts
a
shot
pass
towards the
breakup.
net. That was excellent. She stepped up on that 2-on-1. Lobley behind the net for Canada. Up top, Nicole Crosswaite looking for St. Denis. On it comes in the far corner to Lobley. Lobley looking out in front, continues on her backhand towards the near boards. Has it poked away by Lindquist. Lobley continues, but now Tanskanen rips it off her stick. Tanskanen towards the net. It's knocked away easily by Ida Hudson, who sets the table for Emily Niskanen. Canada trying to get their third line out on a change on the fly, but now Niskanen will come off, and this first line will be back out there for Canada as they get the free hit.
Canada's goalie, Ida Hudson, is showing off some really quick hands and making some plays that aren't that easy look really, really simple.
Jeffries to the far side. Van Thielen across to Pomeroy. Pomeroy down along the extended goal line. It's knocked away by Angerstig. Lovett can only clear it up to center before Van Thielen comes back. She is so good back-checking from her forward position is Van Thielen. Comes up with so many loose balls. Bebout has it along the far boards, tries to spin. Van Thielen ties her up. This shot towards the cage, and that dangerously bounces wide. In on it first is Esther Angerstig. She'll kick it free to Lovett. Lovett plays it forward. Bebout's not going to make it there before Borghese. And Borghese up the boards. Canada wants to race back the other way. Holmes slowing things down by getting it to Jeffries. Jeffries steps up. She'll exchange with Van Thielen in terms of positioning, but Jeffries continues to hold the ball. Now the United States will change on the fly. And boy, Canada, if they had been looking up, they have a one-on-one underneath during that change by the Americans, but I think they wanted to get a change in themselves.
Yeah, they buried themselves behind their own net. It would have been a really long stretch pass to try and get there.
Blomquist in front, and a nice defensive play again by Gerber. Lindquist spins, finds Kirkgetta in space. She in turn spins, wheels, fires, and that's just wide. Lindquist on the doorstep has it knocked out of bounds, but it went last off the stick of Lindquist. And about 6 minutes into this second period, we remain tied at 0. And now you can feel the intensity of every scoring opportunity ratchets up.
Oh, we had a misplaced free hit there.
They'll reset the clock, I think, to 14:08 and then call a face-off. It'll be a sportsman face-off here. The Americans will pop it against the rear boards, and that's fair floor ball, as they say. So the Canadians take it back. Here's Blomquist racing up. A turnover right to the stick of Hagstrom. 3-on-3, and Hagstrom lost it.
Just a little unfortunate collision there.
Looking for Gerber, who is pinching up. Boy, this ball is bouncing everywhere. The last couple of minutes have been like the last 2 minutes of the first period. In comes St. Denis, and she rifles a shot high. Gerda was way out of her net to defend that.
Yep. She reached up to try and make a save and then thought better of it at the last second because it was over the top of the net.
Good recognition on her part. Here's Kohler. Angerstig stops it with her foot. Second line for the U.S. against the first line for Canada. Into the middle, Jeffries scores! Off of the turnover on the near side. The Americans couldn't make it out of their defensive end. And Jeffries has her first goal of the qualifier. Her third goal in her last 4 games played against the Americans.
A little bit of an unfortunate bounce there off the boards up here in front of us, and it popped right to Canada, and she did not miss on that one.
And we'll wait on the goal announcement, but I think it's going to be Jeffries unassisted. 13:29 remaining in the second period, and Canada leading now 1-0. They draw first blood, and that first goal's been waiting a while to happen. We'll see how the Americans respond. Yerda, big save, dives over to the side of the net and grabs it. She keeps the deficit at 1 for right now for the Americans.
Huge, huge save right there.
The ball down the near wing. Here's Lindquist trying to answer. Hagstrom couldn't settle it down. She had an opportunity in the high slot, but the ball just took off on her. KKG back behind the net. Here's Lindquist looking up top. Gerber fires a shot, but it's off the stick of Wobbly. Over to the near wing. Emily Niskanen racing it down. Niskanen began the game at D, now steps up on forward. Here's Emily Niskanen, shot off the leg of Yarda and into the corner where Tanskanen working for the loose ball and the rebound. Niskanen comes away from that a little bit gingerly. I wonder if she might have gotten banged up on that chase for the ball here. 12:33 remaining in the second period. Canada a newfound 1-0 lead.
Oh, bad luck bounce there.
They'll give Jeffries the goal from Pomeroy.
If you're Team USA here, you can't panic. And there's really no reason to panic yet. You still got the rest of this game, but on top of that, you've also got another game should you need it. You don't want to lose this one. But at a 1-0 deficit, you've still got lots of time to score a whole bunch of goals.
This ball turned over. Alto tried to clear it, but Holm comes up with it. And this ball just to the side of the net. Borghese turns. She's in an unfamiliar position down low for the Canadians. And now a shot towards the cage. Yarda makes the save as Jeffries was looking for her second of the game.
Showing some quick hands on that one too.
11:33 now remaining in the second. Still 1-0 Canada, but Canada has kind of turned things around a little bit. Over the last 5-6 minutes of playing time, Canada's had the better of the offensive looks and offensive opportunities. The United States hasn't really had anything settled. Blomqvist shot, that's off the foot of Gerber. And the rebound is poked up high. Lindquist coming away. A Canadian player is down. KKG fires it towards the net, but they have to stop play as it looked like St. Denis went down awkwardly on one leg and is unable to put much weight on that left foot of hers.
Yeah, it looked like she either stepped on a stick or maybe 2 feet collided and she turned that ankle.
Chris McGarry will come over to attend to her. He is one of the local Austin Floorball Club players, but is serving as the Canadian physio, so to speak, and helping out as the trainer this weekend.
He moonlights as a fireman when he's not my defensive partner.
He's putting out fires both on the floorball floor and floorball pitch and in real life. She'll be helped off. They have to open up the boards on that far side to be able to assist her in this endeavor.
Yeah, she hasn't put any pressure at all on that leg, which generally speaking is not a great sign when it comes to ankle injuries.
She had been moved up to forward, played most of yesterday back at D, or at least a decent chunk of yesterday back at D, and now she'll be looked over at the scorer's table, or at the, the trainer's table.
It's probably a better place to go get your ankle looked at.
I don't think the scorer's table could help her much, but both physios now, both the American physio and then the Canadian physio, so to speak, are looking her over, and a
great
centering
defensive
feed
stick play
is knocked away. A nice defensive play by Canada results in a rush the other way, and Van Dielen just couldn't get a free stick on that ball. Fixes the net. That's fair floor ball right there for Yarda back behind her.
It really just feels like the United States team is on their heels right now. There's not a whole lot happening offensively. And when they get the ball down there, they might get it behind the net, but it's certainly not getting the ball into the high-scoring areas that you really want to be taking shots from.
And we see a change here on this second line. Campbell back out there on the second line. Burkett out there for the first time as well up on the second line. She saw a shift on the third line earlier. So Kohler stays out as the center between those two. And Burkett comes back, makes a nice defensive deflection. It's played up the boards. Van Thielen runs into Alto. Alto fighting with her for the ball, and Canada wins a free hit in the near corner.
A little bit of showmanship on that one.
Pomeroy comes away with it. Here's Van Thielen spinning, turning in front. No one home. Home was in the area for Canada, but it's taken by Esther Angerstig. She will calm things down and the United States will change on the ball, as Canada will also sneak in part of a change too. Gerber up to Hagstrom, a give and go. Back it comes to Marie Hagstrom. The American captain goes against the grain. Get the shot. Oh, and the rebound just wide for Suzanne Lindquist on the back post.
First early signs of life for the United States offense in a good while now. That was a pretty set of passes there. It's a shame that they couldn't finish on the back post.
Ball will be played in by Canada. Now past the halfway point of the game. First line out for the Americans, and a give and go for the second Canadian line, but it's snuffed out. The U.S. comes back with it. Lindquist against the grain to Gerber, and Gerber pushed in the back, and she is unhappy with that play. The free hit called to the Americans, and referee Alberto Coduto talking things over with the Canadian player. Hagstrom's shot from distance is kicked aside by Ida Hudson. With it behind her own net is Nicole Crosswaite. She's able to bypass the forechecking of Lindquist up the near boards. It's turned away by Adam. Up top, this shot through traffic, and Yarda manages to get there in time to stop the shot. Adam spins on the near corner. Worked over by Tanskanen. Feeds it up to the point. Blomqvist's shot is blocked by KKG. Hagstrom, it's the end of a long shift, but she's still trying to start the rush. Hagstrom turned it back against on the sweep pass. It was deflected away by Lobley. Lobley into the far corner. Lobley behind the net. Tanskanen takes for the Americans. Tanskanen holding off Lobley at arm's length. Now Tanskanen, an ambitious dangle into the middle of the floor. Finds herself 1-on-2. Still manages to get away. Tries a backhand shot on net. And now we'll go get a change. She was at the end of a shift there. And one could somewhat notice, but she still managed to evade all the Canadian pressure.
Yeah,
now
you could see the dead legs at the end there. As soon as she slowed down, there was no speeding up again.
Bebout and Lovett back on the second line. Kohler still out there as center, and it's poked in towards the net by Jen Kohler, but it's scooped up by Ida Hudson. A great play by Hudson.
On the post right there. That ball was loose for a second.
I think Hudson is a very twitchy goaltender, meant in the best way possible there. She reacted quickly to that ball behind her. Now here is Lovett against the boards. Fed it out for Bebout, who is running down the center. And so coming back is Borghese for the Canadians. The Americans struggling a little bit to clear the zone with possession like they were able to for the most part in the first period. Holm back up top. Here's Borghese. Borghese watched over by the two American forwards who have shifted back into a 2-1-2 now that they're playing defense, and Canada's got their half-court offensive set. Van Thielen.
Canada really is pulling their defenders down low when they're in the offensive zone.
Yeah, they are not widening the floor out as they were in the first period. That's a great point, Mark, and Van Thielen crosses the court over to Holm. That pass is snuffed out by Kohler. Deflected, but only to center court, and now Canada will haul it all the way back behind their own net. Both teams will get complete changes on the fly.
Really feels like the floor is tilted towards the American net right now. The U.S. is really struggling to get anything going.
Niskanen back out there for the Canadians, but it's turned over to KKG. Comes in, change of direction a few times along the far board. She's looking for a target, finds it in Lindquist. Lindquist holds it against the boards now. Reverses to Hagstrom, bounces over her stick, and now Niskanen comes out with it. It's off the foot of Hagstrom. Niskanen comes back behind the net, and Nicole Crosswaite now will be able to clear the defensive end for Canada. Plays it back to Blomqvist. Blomqvist looks up, fires one towards the net. It's knocked down. Boy, that was a dangerous ball in front. Niskanen pops it wide, and it's deflected off an American stick and out. Evie Adam, pardon me, is attempting to center it. Burkett and Campbell back in on the second line between Kohler, and Kohler blocks this. Comes back to the point, and Jeffries. It seems like the Americans right now just trying to survive until the next shift.
Yeah, it really does feel like the Americans are just trying to hang on. They just can't get anything going out of their own zone.
Holm behind the net. Holm looks out in front, will continue to circle. Holm diagonal pass up to Borghese, but it hopped over her stick. She'll come back and play it on to Jeffries.
Seems like Canada's pretty just happy to cycle the ball around the zone right now until they can get an open look. The USA is just playing chase floor ball almost exclusively currently.
Pomeroy against the end boards. Pulls it out in front, looking for Van Thielen. It's kicked away for a moment by Kohler. Now Kohler deflects that centering feed, and Campbell will bank it off of the boards. Chases right past it. Borghese steps in and has it lifted from behind by Kohler, who may have saved a goal or at least a great scoring chance in that circumstance.
Yeah, that was in a dangerous spot for sure.
Both teams trying to get partial changes at least in. Played by Adam, back to the point. Lobley waiting for the defense to change for the Canadians. Just fires a shot right into Hagstrom's knee.
Interesting choice.
And Hagstrom now breaks the opposite direction. Hagstrom to KKG. Just couldn't squeeze off the one-timer. Ball skitters to the corner. It's taken by Crosswaite. Nicole Crosswaite has had an excellent game in terms of getting to those loose balls along the end boards and being able to clear under control.
She's been absolutely everywhere so far. Just an absolute menace on offense and defense.
She has gotten to so many loose balls there behind the net. Now this ball knocked down at center by Hagstrom. The Americans trying to race in. Lindquist wanted to pull that back across the crease, but it instead goes into the corner, and who else but Crosswaite comes out with it. Here's the Canadian break on Lobley. Lobley stops up, plays with the ball a bit, and back it comes to Jeffries. The Canadian second line will change. And one thing we should mention as well is we've got these line matchups going now where the American second line is against the Canadian first line and vice versa. And you wonder if that's something intentional on the part of one or both coaches.
Considering how strategic most of the changes have been, they're happening on the field and not during free hits or anything.
Catherine Lovett couldn't quite get to that loose ball ahead of Borghese. And it's scooped up by Ida Hudson. I was surprised that Ida Hudson did not come out to play that ball from her goaltending position. She would have been the easiest one to get there and kick that out of harm's way.
Yeah, it looked like she was just a little hesitant, and then by the time she decided that maybe it was a good idea, it was a little late. And then you just put yourself into that no man's land that no goalie ever wants to be in.
Lovett, a nice play to force Jeffries back. Jeffries, though, does eventually find Pomeroy. Back comes Jeffries towards the net. It's deflected in front. A couple of hacks at it. And this will be a free hit in a dangerous position for Canada as a couple of Americans got their sticks in on Sophia Holm.
Lucky for the Americans, the ball rolled away a little bit, so they've got time to get their feet under them and set up how they want to play defense. But, boy, this is a spot where you expect to score goals off of free hits.
And they did get the benefit of the official pointing out the correct distance in this circumstance. Pomeroy gives it to Van Thielen, and that ball knocked away. It was right into the wall. I think it was Kohler that got most of that ball. Trying to clear his Lovett. It's forward. Here comes Bebout pressuring Borghese, but Borghese able to calmly get it across to Jeffries. Seems like the Americans are second in on every loose ball and every free ball to this point in the second period.
Yeah, the Canadians just look hungrier right now. They're winning all the 50-50 balls. They're winning everything in the corner. It's just the Americans holding on defense and breaking up passes and blocking shots.
Van Thielen plays it on to Pomeroy. Watch Van Thielen here. Shot fired, and that's off of the chest of Yarda, who did a great job following that pass. And now this shot pumped off the side of the net. Pomeroy recollects and wants to recycle this Canadian offensive set. Watched over by Alto. Now finds Holm on the far side. Borghese way down in from her defensive spot. That's behind the net. The Americans scrambling, and Yarda gets over to stop the low shot from Van Thielen, able to cover up the 5-hole.
Luckily, she couldn't get quite enough of it to lift it and put it into the legs because there was a lot of open net up top on that shot attempt.
And that's a difficult sequence for a goaltender. Yarda went post to post to post to post several times in about 15 seconds and was able to finally settle things down by controlling the rebound.
She's been in full scramble mode for quite a while, which, as a goalie, the longer you're in that, the more stressful it is.
I feel like the Americans haven't had a shot on net or a decent chance on net in quite some time now. KKG loses it against the end boards, and again, it's Nicole Crosswaite coming away with it. And I know she's not the goal scorer to this point, but if I had a choice for player of the game for Canada, it would be Nicole Crosswaite to this stage.
I don't think there's any contest at all. She has been everything for Team Canada, aside from the goal scorer, like you said.
Blomqvist, a long shot, well wide of the net of Yarda, and back it comes for Gerber, who puts it off
the referee.
The official.
Yep.
And the official will call the play dead. It'll be a face-off, but it'll be a sportsman's face-off here. And coming over to give it to the Americans is Niskanen. Niskanen will put it out of bounds, which same result.
Whatever works, yeah.
Gerber surveys her options. Here comes the forecheck of Canada again. Tanskanen forward. Joe Owens taking a shift right here on forward. Owens pushing her way along the, or pardon me, that's Suzanne Lindquist. They're about the same height, but from behind they're wearing the same hairdo as well. So Suzanne Lindquist, I apologize, but Lindquist was able to push it deeper, but Canada collects. Blomqvist another long shot on net. Yarda picks up the shot and the rebound.
A little loose there, but she held on to it.
And Canada was not crashing the net in that occasion. Here's Gerber forward to Hagstrom. A little bit of room for Hagstrom. This shot towards the net.
Good hard shot, but nobody around the net. Nothing you could do with the rebound there.
Seconds left as KKG rifles a shot wide.
USA team showing a little bit of signs of life here late in the second, which is what you want to see if you're a United States fan.
We've lost the clock camera, but I'll tell you, there's 30 seconds even remaining in the second period. 1-0 the Canadian lead after a goal from this woman, Jeffries, who puts it in wide of the net. Holm behind the net, 15 seconds now remaining in the second period. Quick shot and a nice hand save there from Yarda. And free hit called to the Canadians with 11.8 seconds left in the second period. And this may be the biggest moment of the game so far.
Another really dangerous area to have a free hit.
Pomeroy thinks about the shot. Instead, it comes out to Van Thielen. Shot blocked by Campbell. She'll kick it to the far boards. It's loose inside. A nice play by Angerstig to clear up, but not out. 2 seconds remaining. Van Thielen will toss it towards the net. Kohler says no, and it's a 1-0 game heading now to the third period. So, Mark, we saw an interesting period insofar as we have not seen Canada own a period like that out of the 5 we've played here in the qualifier thus far.
If you're Team Canada, you are thrilled with how this second period went. You've had the ball in their zone for pretty much the entire period. The USA is really on their heels right now. It'll be really interesting to see what changes both teams make headed into the third. Canada, with that 1-goal lead, have to be pretty happy with it. But the USA is just one good shot or one crazy bounce away from it being a tie game again.
All right, so once again the score, Canada 1, the United States 0, after a goal by Megan Jeffries, assisted by Sophie Pomeroy at 26:31 of this contest. And again, that floor tilted very much in the way of Canada in the second period. We'll be back for the third period of action after this break and set you up for the final 20 minutes. This is the Women's 2025 World Floorball Championship qualifications from Austin, Texas. And we welcome you back for the third period of Game 2 of the Women's 2025 World Floorball Championship qualifications from Austin, Texas. There's a little bit of energy now in the stands. This is the largest crowd. In fact, this is the largest crowd I can remember for a qualifier in the U.S., especially on the women's side. A fairly packed audience to our left, but the Canadians are the ones that lead 1-0. They are technically the home team on the scoreboard. Trent Kling alongside Mark Raup. Happy to be with you here as Canada got the only goal of the game in the second period off the stick of Megan Jeffries on a shot from the low slot. It was assisted by Sophie Pomeroy, her third assist of this series.
We're 12 seconds in, and we're already seeing more offense from the USA than we did in the second period, pretty much all together.
And they're going to get Suzanne Lindquist on an interference call on the crease area, the goalkeeper, after the shot coming from the corner. The Americans, if they win, they will clinch a spot in the 2025 World Floorball Championships in Czechia. The first games will be played in Brno. The later games will be played in Ostrava. And Mark, after that first period, we figured we were going to see a back and forth second period, but it turned out that Canada was on the front foot pretty much the entirety of the second period if you're just joining us. Bebout to Alto. Second line out there for the Americans. Here's Esther Angerstig. Angerstig in the corner. Wheeling against Holm. Angerstig takes a stick, plays on. Angerstig in front, looking for Lovett, and that ball passes her. Now Alto has the ball tied up in her feet. Holm in the middle, the shot blocked by Bebout. Rebound is stopped. What a save by Yarda, keeping the Americans within one, and the shot goes just wide from Pomeroy in front. The shot stopped by Yarda. Rebound shot stopped by Yarda on a kick save. Two-pad stack. Shot coming from Jeffries. That is stopped by Ella Yarda. An elephantine sequence by the American goalkeeper. Kohler blocks this into the corner. The United States getting their wits about them once again. Bebout tries to tie up Van Thielen, who got a couple of shots in that sequence. Started with a pass block by Bebout, but then it all heck broke loose in front of the American net, and now Bebout will chase the ball back into the Canadian end, and it'll force Van Thielen to come back to her bench and change.
We saw about 5 saves in there, and I think 2 other block shots by defenders. That ball was just rattling around right at the doorstep for a good 10 seconds.
The Canadians back with it offensively. That pass goes through everyone, and somehow Yarda came back to make the save on Lobley. Lobley looking for her second goal of this 3-game series. She was shut down. Yarda has had an excellent start to this third period, reminiscent of how Kate McBean started the period yesterday for the Americans, the third period that is. Lobley blocks this pass attempt from Tiff Gerber out. Now the Americans will set things up with their first line. Marie Hagstrom spins, goes between the legs, but she went into an area where there were 3 Canadian players.
Yeah, we got a little stick lift there to give the ball back to the Canadian team. After a really nice initial burst by the U.S. team, it really feels like, again, the Canadian team has the floor tilted towards the U.S. goal.
Jeffries to the far side. Looks for Van Thielen. This first line back out there for Canada, and she got the ball back, but the official said she committed a stick infraction in so doing. And the second line will drop back out for the Americans. So it looks like this rotation where every other shift for the second line, Campbell and Burkett come out, and then the other shifts it's Bebout. And this shot was stopped. I was waxing philosophical about the second line for the Americans, and Ella Yarda comes up with another major save, that time on a partial breakaway. But the Americans bending, not breaking in the third period, but you can only bend so much in these circumstances.
It certainly helps when your goaltender is a tiny brick wall.
Here's Van Thielen. Her shot Ends up winding off of her stick, so she exchanges with Jeffries instead. Now goal line extended for Holm. Holm goes all the way back to the point, and Borghese will settle things down. The Americans will shift back into their W. They'll get a partial change. Hagstrom comes out, as does Gerber. The others from the second line remain in the game. It's off of the stick of Hagstrom. Burkett thinking about making the change, now will stay out. Borghese holds. And for Canada, not really a sense of urgency necessarily with that 1-goal lead.
They definitely are in a place where they can...
You prefer not to do that if you're Canada, as Ida Hudson comes up big on a save on KKG.
You certainly are okay with possessing the ball and holding the ball in your zone, but turning it over right in the middle of the slot, generally speaking, not a great idea.
Clara Guerra has it, feeds it up to Hagstrom. Hagstrom between the legs of Lobley. Hagstrom breaking in, and Lindquist will be called off of the ball. She got tied up there with Blomqvist. I didn't see what was happening. I was watching Hagstrom on the near side.
They definitely got tangled up. It was hard to tell exactly what happened, but it may have been that Suzanne had her tied up, had her stick tied up under her loose arm.
Hagstrom runs into Tanskanen as they vied for the loose ball off of the stick of Emily Blomqvist, who turns, holds, and Canada continuing to dwindle the time off of the clock. Or put more properly, watch the clock time dwindle. Nicole Crossweight plays into the middle. This ball knocked away. KKG steals it. And here is Hagstrom with it for the Americans. Here's KKG. Back to the point. Gerber looks through traffic, fires, and equal to that task was the Canadian goaltender Hudson. Lindquist got a couple of chances on the doorstep, unable to put any behind that far post.
Two great saves by Hudson in that sequence, one of which she really had to range out to get to the ball.
Nearing the 14-minute mark to go in the third period. Second line out there for the Americans. It's Bebout, Lovett, and Kohler the forwards, with Alto and Angerstig the defenders. Holm exchanges over to the far side. The Canadian first line out there. A shot right on by Van Thielen is stopped by Yarda, as Yarda and Ida Hudson exchange saves over the last few minutes. Angerstig runs into Kohler. The ball gets away, and it's shot just wide by Pomeroy. Alto trying to feed it up the boards, but Bebout had taken off. This ball off the stick of Borghese. Bebout got a stick in there to deflect it, and now this through ball played to the near side. Bebout looks to feed it towards the net. It's deflected by Borghese. Here's Lovett. Lovett in front, looking for Kohler. That ball deflected away by the Canadian defender, and now here comes Jeffries with it. Feeds it up to Holm, and Canada will switch on the fly, as will the United States. So we continue the first versus second line matchups here between the two teams.
It's good to see that the United States ladies are really starting to show some signs of life, getting the ball deep in the zone, getting some chances in front of the net, being a little bit less passive overall, and really starting to force play a little bit more.
Lobley turning against Gerber, underneath a centering feed, and a bouncing ball in the slot put just wide by Emily Niskanen. It's Adam trying to play it back to Niskanen, but turned away by Lindquist. Lindquist comes back up with it. Lindquist running up the floor, is chased down by Adam. She spins away, gives it back to Tanskanen. She and Gerber exchange. Tanskanen towards the net, and that goes just high and wide. Ida Hudson had a good read on it, though. And one of the things that's impressed me about Hudson to this point in the game, she has been so good about looking around screens when there's bodies in front.
She's really calm in the net until she needs to scramble, and then she is very quick with her scramble moves.
Hagstrom not given any quarter on the near side by Lobley. An excellent defensive play coming back from her forward position. KKG takes it back over. Here's Hagstrom back to KKG. And those two have tried to connect on a few, but Canada has been paying a lot of attention to the passing lanes between those two players. A quick shot by Lindquist, that's pawed aside by Hudson. She got it with the right hand. Hagstrom behind the net. Marie Hagstrom in front looking for Lindquist or KKG, and instead Canada able to clear it up to center. The Americans will get a change on the fly. Alto from the second line already in out there. The remainder of the second line will come out. And here is Angerstick. Back to Alto. Alto spins. Dangerous pass to Angerstig with Lobley coming from behind, but a nice pivot by Esther Angerstig.
Good stagger step move there to get away from some pressure.
Campbell shot. Oh, boy. That was hit by a high stick of Kohler. It was an unintentional high stick. If that doesn't hit the stick, it may go into the net.
That was pretty close to the top of the bar there.
Kohler was trying to get out of the way of the shot and just ended up tagging it with her stick, so the high stick call, inadvertent though it may be.
But again, more signs of life from Team USA here. They're doing a much better job of getting the ball in and getting shots on net.
And what's more, it's the second line getting the last couple of opportunities for the U.S. Van Thielen, the far corner. Van Thielen watched over carefully by Angerstig. Now here's the dangerous Holm. Up top to Jeffries. Back to Pomeroy. Pomeroy looked for the feed initially and then rifled one off the mask of Yarda.
Your mask is getting a workout today, Trent.
It has been. Van Thielen puts a shot off of Kohler and wide. Van Thielen attempts another off a one-time blast, and that goes wide. Holm underneath. Looking up for Borghese. Thought about the shot, instead feeds back to Holm. On to Borghese. Boy, Canada's D pinched way down on this offensive possession as the Americans on their back heels. Just trying to collapse and deny a scoring opportunity to Canada. Pomeroy around the side of the net.
Canada's really happy just to probe around the outside right now, keep possession, and then find themselves a nice open pass to hit.
Borghese had a shooting lane, but Alto able to step into it. Takes that in the hip. Van Thielen looks against Angerstig. Angerstig watches this ball along the back of the net for Pomeroy. This Canadian first line keeping the pressure going, and Yarda another mask save off the blast from Van Thielen's stick.
I think that is at 4 or 5 that
That's
have gone
5.
off your mask.
I've been counting. I charge for everyone. 9:41 remaining in the third period.
I'm sure the check's in the mail, Trent.
1-0. 5 cents coming my way. And I do want to pass along an injury update on Cass St. Denis. She left the game in the second period. We were told it is a knee injury for Cass St. Denis. Just doesn't feel very stable, and so hasn't seen any more playing time this game after she was attended to by the trainers. Another nice save at the side of the net by Yarda. And Mark, we've got a vote in terms of player of the game, I am told. Yarda would be probably mine for the Americans to this point.
I don't think there's any doubt where we stand right now that she hasn't been the best player for the United States. She has put out just about every fire that Canada has thrown at them except for one.
Niskanen wheeled in to take the shot, but it was off of Marie Hagstrom, the captain getting back defensively to block it. Now Tanskanen steps in. 1-0, Canada leading, and now it's taken away by Adam. Here is a shot from Lobley and a goal. Evie Adam comes away with a steal, found Lobley, who took her time, saw that she had space in the high slot, and rifled it past Yarda. Nothing the U.S. keeper could do, and it's 2-0 Canada.
Yeah, that's a really tough spot for a turnover. As a goalie, when your defenders lose the ball right in front of you, you're already in a little bit of a scramble mode, and then when somebody catches a pass off of a turnover, generally speaking, you're sunk.
So Canada staking themselves to a 2-goal lead, and just the way this game has been played, Mark, that really seems insurmountable at this point. Although it's not, logically, but it certainly seems that way emotionally if you're an American fan.
It really feels like whatever happens in the next couple of minutes, if Canada scores again or if the United States can get it back down to 1 again, you're going to be in a really good spot for the rest of the game. But a 2-goal lead is tough to protect.
So the 2-0 lead, as you could see on your screen, lobbly from Adam. And now Canada, you know they're going to be ragging a little bit more time off of the clock as this game progresses.
At some point soon, the United States is going to have to commit to starting to press the ball a little bit harder, because Canada is going to be more than happy to take up all the time in the world in their zone with the ball. Or, like they are now, just rolling it around the outside of the USA zone.
And this has been the tough line matchup for the U.S. And oddly enough, it wasn't the second line for the U.S. that gave up the last goal. It was the first line. But this second line, when they've been out against the Canadian first line, they managed a few chances early on in the third period, but since that point have struggled. Kirgera scores! And the Americans have pulled it back to within one!
It looked like Ida Hudson maybe got caught leaning a little bit on that one. She was a little bit more to the middle of the net than she should have been, considering where KKG was setting up to shoot. It also helped that KKG dipped her shoulders a little bit and sold the fake before she ripped it. But boy, what a finish that was.
And again, we talk about the dynamic of players taking time and space. And that time, KKG saw that she had time and space, took a little extra time, and I think that's what enticed the lean coming from the keeper. So just a minute after Canada scores.
Oh my goodness. That one almost took out the referee.
And this shot towards the cage goes wide of Hudson, who surrendered her first goal of the game. You can see on the screen the first goal for the United States from Kirgera, or off the stick of Kirgera from Hagstrom at 52-11. That is Hagstrom's 6th point of this 2-game series. And now the Americans, now that they've broken the seal, you have to wonder what that means as far as momentum is concerned for this one, because it's been all Canada for pretty much the last 30 minutes of playing time until that goal.
Yeah, we'll see if scoring a goal wakes them up completely. Now that they've got a little bit of confidence, it wouldn't surprise me at all if they can get another one. But you got to watch out also, because you start to push a little bit too hard, you end up a little bit overstretched and into the offensive zone, and then you give up another one, and then it's 3-1, and you're chasing 2 again.
Jeffries through to the crease, and that goes wide of Yarda. Van Thielen underneath to Holm. Holm looks to Pomeroy, seeking Van Thielen out in front, the shot and the goal! Once again, it is Pomeroy to Van Thielen, and once again, the Canadians have a 2-goal lead.
Point-blank shot there from a really nice pass behind the net. Not much at all you can do as a goaltender.
And we knew the minute Pomeroy got the ball in that position, she was going to be seeking Van Thielen, who popped out and did a really nice job giving herself space. So Pomeroy picks up another assist, her 2nd of the game, her 4th of this 2-game series. So the time of the Canadian goal, they announce it as 53-19, Van Thielen from Pomeroy. And now a quick shot from Elsa Tanskanen off a Canadian stick and out. The two teams exchanging scoring opportunities. And the Americans find themselves down by 1. This game is now opened up. 3 goals within the span of just a couple of minutes here in the third period, after we had seen just a few, or just 1 for the prior 52 minutes of playing time.
50 minutes of floor ball with 1 goal, and now, yeah, about 4 minutes with 3. You just never know.
Nicole Crosswaite trying to bring it up for the Canadians. Americans wanted a high stick. But instead, KKG comes back, recovers, feeds it forward to Hagstrom. Hagstrom looks towards the net. Everyone on Canada is back. Hagstrom has no choice but to take the shot, which is knocked aside by Ida Hudson, getting both her hands to that. Kirgera behind the net. Lindquist The ball ends up behind Lobley. It's popped out in front. A dangerous ball knocked away. Good defensive play from Emily Niskanen, who had cut down into the goalkeeper area to make sure that ball came to.
A good quick stick there by the Canadian defense because KKG was certainly lurking on the other post.
I tell you, Mark, as a timeout is called, I believe by Team Canada, we've seen 5+ good periods of floorball here. And how often in qualifiers, whether it's the American qualifiers or the qualifiers for the Americas or the European qualifiers, that you see these, you don't very often see close games that go back and forth, right? There's a lot of games between countries that have disparities in talent. And we've seen that sometimes between the Americans and the Canadians in the past. But the last 5+ periods have really been kind of a blessing if you're a floorball fan, because you're seeing two teams that are evenly matched. The Americans won yesterday 9-6, and the Canadians so far leading today 3-1.
Yeah, the Canadians have certainly answered today after some doubts late in the game happened for them. And you really have to be impressed with the resilience that they've shown to stick through this and be in the lead with 5 minutes left to go after taking a pretty tough loss yesterday.
And they've taken some of the wild back and forth I think the Canadians have out of this game. Forced the Americans into settling more for a half-pitch offense. And the Americans haven't gotten a lot of good looks in that sense. So we see Esther Angerstig coming out for the Americans, who pull their netminder. And it's Tiff Gerber in front of the net. Gerber smashes
There's a goal!
in! Taking their goalie out enabled the Americans to put Angerstig on defense, which enabled them in turn to put Gerber in front of the net. She scores her 3rd goal in the last 2 games, and the Americans are within 1 with 5 minutes left. Ambitious pulling their goalie this early.
Big risk, but big reward right there.
They came out of the timeout seeking to push within 1, and now you wonder, how soon do they do that again? How soon do they go to that same well? Do they wait until maybe 2 minutes left, or do they do it earlier?
General strategy says when you're only trailing 1, you hang with your goalie for a pretty fair amount of time. U.S. buzzing here, though.
Looking towards the net. It's deflected away. Holm down there. Holm, who was on defense most of yesterday. He's playing underneath.
Seeing some sustained pressure, sorry about that, in the offensive zone here by the U.S. team for the first time in quite a while.
Goalie off for the Americans. Angerstig comes off as the extra attacker. Gerber will move in front. So it's announced at 54:58 the time of the goal for the Americans. This shot towards the net by Tanskanen goes wide. And a Canadian free hit means Angerstig will go off for Yarda. Yarda races back into the net. 4:05 remaining in the 3rd period. This is some very entertaining floorball, at least for a neutral, certainly. I know the partisan crowd here in Austin biting off fingernails, doing what they can, crossing their fingers behind their backs, etc., trying to get the Americans back into things.
The chess match for these last 4 minutes is going to be fun to watch, because it's obvious the U.S. is not afraid at all of pulling their goalie a little earlier than you would expect. And there she goes.
Here comes Yarda. 3:40 remaining in this 3rd period. They pull her again. Tanskanen to the corner to Lindquist. Gerber still in front of the net. Gerber's job there to screen and put home rebounds. She's done that once already. Lindquist, Tanskanen. Angerstig looks towards the net. It was just out of the reach of Kirk Guerra, who has the first American goal in this game. Angerstig back to Tanskanen. U.S. trailing by 1. 6-on-5. Gerber's shot towards the net. That is deflected towards the far boards. It'll stay in for the moment, but now Blomqvist kicks it out. And that was Niskanen on the block for the Canadians.
Really nice possession there. You got to see if you can't get a shot off, though.
Here's Kirk Guerra. To the point. Angerstig.
And no reason to panic yet.
Angerstick put it in deep. Now she's got a long run over to the bench, but the ball went away from the Canadians there, and they want to change anyway. Now the Canadians bring it across center. Jeffries with it. Pomeroy, first line out there for Canada. Holm. She's so good on the ball, so difficult to lift the ball away from her, but Gerber does. Puts it off the top of the near boards.
What a defensive play by number 18 down here in front of us.
Nearly had a break. Yeah, Borghese came up big with a huge defensive play, and now Yarda will race to the loose ball behind the net. She'll give it to Gerber. She'll sprint to the sideline. 2:18 to go in the third period, and the U.S. is back to 6-on-5. Gerber, near side. KKG back to Gerber. KKG shot. Oh, that was bending wide of the far post.
Boy, that had a lot of banana on it.
Kohler's pass is picked off but tipped. Angerstig coming back to the bench. Yarda will step back on. Angerstig might have pulled something, and now Joe Owens comes off the bench.
That was a wild sequence of events there right in front of the U.S. bench.
And Owens did that. It was a smart play by her because she realized that the next player up was not ready, and she was the next closest player. This ball fired the length by the Canadians. So Angerstig looked like she might have turned an ankle. Now a change for the Americans. They're going to get 6 players back out there. Alto comes out. Gerber steps off. And so a change in personnel. Alto, Angerstig now back out. Here comes Kim Campbell. The Americans had 5 players out for a short time. I don't think the Canadians realized it. KKG with a minute left. Angerstig looks to the far side. Lindquist fires a shot. That is blocked down. Lindquist looks against the defense of Pomeroy. Back it comes to Alto. 50 seconds remaining. Nora Alto looks back to Angerstig. Lindquist loses it along the boards. Gets pushed by Jeffries. And
pretty
it'll be
easy
an American
call there,
free hit.
yeah.
Yep.
That was a little forearm right in the back.
Not a bad play by Jeffries, though, as they get a stop. Hagstrom looks to center. Not much there. She did Zorro yesterday. Loses it. Marie Hagstrom trying to chip it free. Hagstrom, wraparound attempt, and it's grabbed by Ida Hudson with 26 seconds remaining. Canada trying to get it away, but KKG steals it. KKG pushes into the middle. Wants a call, won't get it. And now Canada puts it off of KKG and out with 15 seconds remaining, holding on to a 1-point lead.
Got to go full-blown pressure here. You got to get the ball quick, and you got to get a goal right after it.
Down the stretch in Austin. Jeffries backing into Lindquist.
You got to get somebody else on the ball.
Pushing D. Yes, you have extra players out there. 6 seconds left. Hagstrom gets it. Hagstrom in front. It comes loose. The shot.
Oh, my God, what a save.
Keeper by Ida Hudson, and Canada wins it 3-2.
Ida Hudson, the absolute hero with less than a second on the clock. My goodness.
If you paid to get in here, you got triple your money's worth today.
At least.
What a closing sequence. And Ida Hudson makes the save to shut things down. And Mark, unfortunately, we had to give our player of the game nominations a little bit early. I think Ida Hudson would move up that list a little bit after that save and that sequence late. Shut down the wraparound first attempt by Hagstrom, and then as the ball cut out to the far side, a quick turnaround shot. The U.S. knew they needed to get it off, and Hudson once more able to get a part of her body on it, push it wide, and that's all they wrote here from St. Stephen's High School in Austin, Texas.
We saw a pretty fair amount of good saves today, but that last save takes the cake. The difficulty level of it, the time, and just the absolute ice water in her veins to pop up and shoulder that ball away from the net with no time left on the clock. Incredible.
Ella Yarda gets the player of the game for the United States, and I think that was fairly come by. She held them close in the second period, and if not for her, the United States would have had a lot larger deficit to work back from. And the goalie for Canada, Ida Hudson, receives their player of the game award as well. And I think, Mark, this is something that we can both support as a sometimes goalie on your end and as an always goalie on my end. I think we like to see the goalies get recognition, but this game is not 3-2 without the keepers in the net tonight.
Both of the keepers played absolutely spectacularly in net and deserve those rewards 1,000,000%. What
Absolutely.
A great game by both goalies.
Absolutely well-played game in net. And now, Mark, this brings about a question because we have a decisive Game 3 tomorrow. It's at 10 a.m. Austin time, so limited time to recover for these teams. But also, you get a question for both of these teams. Do you go back to Hudson and Yarda in net, or do you go back to McBean and Norsworthy, who had been the nominal starters for these teams coming into this series?
It certainly makes me glad that I'm not the coach for either of these teams, because those are both really difficult decisions.
And so the final score here from Austin, 3-2. Canada wins it over the United States. For Ricardo on camera and for Mark Raup next to me, I'm Trent Kling saying so long until tomorrow. Once again, 18 hours.
And I've been asked by most of our Austin friends to say this. So, everybody, we'll see you at Pine House in a little bit.
All right. Thank you, Mark, for joining us here. And we appreciate you for joining us. You've been watching the Women's 2025 World Floorball Championship qualifications from Austin, Texas. Canada wins it. Goodbye, everyone.